What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you like what I'm doing here, I'd appreciate you liking and subscribing and all that sort of stuff. It really helps me out. But anyway, alright. Worst preamp, but best distortion pedal. What is this guy talking about? Well, let me attempt to clarify. Alright, so here in front of me I have the Andy James Revenant preamp pedal, the Horizon Devices Apex preamp, and the Bogner Ubershaw pedal. I didn't necessarily say preamp there because I'm not sure. I think they just call it the Ubershaw pedal. The Revenant and the Apex are for sure sold as quote-unquote preamp pedals. And they are designed, supposedly, to go into the effects return of an amp or direct to an interface, which in this case, they are direct to the interface. Companies have kind of blurred the lines between what a distortion pedal and what a preamp pedal is. I'd personally like to think about these in like this. So basically that a preamp pedal goes into either the effects loop, like the return of an amp, to replace your amp's preamp, or it goes direct to an interface. It just goes into cab simulation, which is how I usually like to use it. Whereas a distortion pedal, to me, is meant to distort a clean channel, meaning you plug it directly into your amp's clean channel. I think that people don't realize how significantly running a pedal into a clean channel changes the tone versus running it into a return or direct to interface. It's significant. So the purpose of this video is to kind of point out my thought process that these two pedals, which I would say are my two least favorite, I won't say the worst, but I do think they're the worst. I think that they're the worst. That's my opinion. The worst preamp pedals that I've come across, along with one of the best preamp pedals I've come across. And my point here is that the Apex and the Ubershaw, although I think they totally fail as preamp pedals, I think that they work as competent distortion pedals. Whereas the Revenant, I think, is an amazing preamp pedal, but I also think it can serve as an amazing distortion pedal. And ultimately, that's what I think a good pedal should do, whether it's a distortion or a preamp. But for sure, when it's marketed as a preamp pedal, it's supposed to be an all-in-one solution, I would for sure expect it to sound great direct into interface. But alright, so basically what we're going to do today is we're going to quickly compare all these guys direct into interface, and then I also have them running into the input of my Armored Amplification Sentinel, its clean channel. I'm going to show you how we're going to compare them in all three of these pedals in both of those situations. And you guys can kind of make your own opinions of this and see if you agree with me or not. We'll kind of talk about it along the way. But alright. Let's start with the Ubershaw pedal. Well, let's start with all of them quickly, direct to interface. So alright, with everything at noon and none of their like extra like boosts or tight modes or anything on, obviously, well, to me, the Revenant sounds the closest to what I would call like an amp sound. It sounds like I would use that sound. Let's dial them in just a bit and try to get the best sound out of them before I even turn on the clean channel. me, as I've said before, that lacks a certain amount of presence and high end. But we'll go back through all of them at the end. Similar situation with the Ubershaw pedal. Alright, let's see what they all sound like now, back to back. Again, the Revenant kind of blows the other two out of the water to my ears. And notice that I still have plenty of high end or whatever to pull out of the Revenant, whereas these two I've cranked their treble and such, and I just don't get the same amount of attack and presence and everything. But alright, that part's done. So, I think that the Apex preamp is a great way to demonstrate this. Let's turn this on. Now let's turn on the clean channel of my Sentinel. You might even say that there's too much high-end presence there, like it's sizzly. That's not the right word, but anyway, yeah. So. Much better to my ears. Let's see how let's turn off. Let's go between the clean channel and just direct the interface real quick. So this is into the clean channel. Huge difference. Let's try the same thing for the Ubershaw. Direct to interface. Turn on the clean channel. Alright, so now we're going to leave the clean channel on and just kind of compare these as distortion. Well, let me go to the Revenant first. and turn off the clean channel. Turning it on. Instantly way too much trouble. So let's turn some of that down. Clean channel is on. I'm going to turn it off. So as you can see, running them into the clean channel as a distortion pedal for sure adds a bunch more presence and bite. For something like the Apex Preamp and the Uberschall, I feel like it needs that to make a competent tone. Whereas the Revenant, which I consider to be a very high quality preamp pedal, it can for sure be molded around that to still work, but I still think that it works best into a effects return or direct to interface. All that said, I think that the Apex Preamp actually sounds really darn good, at least into this clean channel. So I think it's a pretty, in terms of a distortion pedal, I can't really think of anything that I would rather have as a distortion pedal than the Apex Preamp, which is kind of interesting to say, right? Because, I mean, you guys know how I generally feel about the Apex Preamp. I still say that it's not worth a buy, particularly in the way that they market it, which is it's a preamp pedal, and they say, hey, this can be all you need. It has a cab sim and everything. The cab sim is the dead giveaway that it's intended to be able to be used direct into a interface. Like you wouldn't run a cab sim into a clean channel. It doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work well anyway. It's not meant to work that way. But that said, this pedal for sure sounds the best into a clean channel. The Uberschall, it's okay. So, bam, there we go. I think we found a pedal that I dislike more than the Apex Preamp. Because the Apex Preamp, it has its uses in terms of like, hey, I think it sounds like perfectly fine as a distortion pedal. But the Uberschall is just okay in that situation, to me. But let's just do a little bit more playing and then we'll get out of here. I think I've kind of made my point there. Alright, I'm going to leave the clean channel on here so we can play with them as distortion pedals. So yeah, through all that, into a clean channel, I think that in terms of tones I got here, the Revenant and the Apex Preamp are probably comparable, but I'm not gonna sit here and just dial in the perfect tone in this situation on the Revenant. But just because it has so much more range in terms of its EQ, I feel like I could ultimately get a better tone out of it than the Apex Preamp. But as it stands, I'd say that into this clean channel, they're pretty comparable. But as soon as I turn it off, yeah, as soon as I turn it off, it gets to a point where I would for sure rather have the Revenant. As I've said before, for sure, there are some decent tones inside both of these pedals, even direct to interface. But were I to pull out my series right now, this falls apart, as I've shown before, and the Revenant is kind of the only thing, well, not the only thing, but in terms of these three, the Revenant could kind of keep up with the series direct to interface. But yeah, main point I got here is that running pedals into a clean channel makes a huge difference versus running them as a dedicated preamp. But yeah, hope some of you learned something or found this interesting. If you did, like I said, I appreciate you. Like and subscribe. I have some cool stuff coming in the next couple of days as well. Appreciate you guys watching this video. Take care.